We're back here on the Soccer OG. Let us step into the business end. A gentleman who, by the way, when I ask if he can jump on here, always immediately says yes, and I really appreciate it because I'm okay. Alexi, I will chase down guests. I could be a pain in the rear, but you've never allowed me to be a pain with regards to you. You're like, when can we do it? And let's jump on. So much
You,
appreciated.
I do not need to be chased down when it comes to Maximiliano. Okay, all you need to do is send out that text to me, and I am there. By the way, you look good, buddy. You look austere. You look mature. Although these what are these like Harry Carey glasses that you're wearing? I mean, you look like
Hey,
that Pochettino guy. You know.
that's a great idea. You know what? I might do Harry. What do you think? I'll do Harry Carey because I dressed up like Harry Carey, not with these glasses, much more, uh,
Pronounced,
over the
yeah.
top glasses. And I dressed up for Halloween, and it was a hit. Like most people didn't know who I was, but the one person who did went bananas. So
Oh.
maybe I could do Harry. I could bring back like that old Will Ferrell. Harry Carey hits on U.S. Soccer. Hey, where did all our center backs go? Can't anyone pass a midfield for crying out loud? I don't know. I mean, Will Ferrell might get a cease and desist, but we'll see.
No, you do it, buddy. Do it.
All right, that's a good idea. Hey, you want to start with the good news or the bad news?
I don't care. Either way, we're gonna get to them.
Let's let's let us start with the good news. Finally, and it was driving me mental, Alexi. By the way, Alexi Lalas of Fox Sports, Fox Soccer, and the State of the Union podcast with David Mossy, which, if you are in these U.S. circles or if you just want to learn a little bit more, which you should during the World Cup, check it out. It's a wonderful resource, and Alexi is knows his stuff, to put it mildly. But there's much more. There's much more layers to it. Alexi, we get this news finally. I mean, I'm still kind of ruffled a bit about how long it took because I was hoping to see Mauricio Pochettino on a day where we had this presidential debate. Football has began and there's games everywhere. So people aren't really locked into this USA game. The idea of him coming out and he waves at the crowd and gets everyone energized. We didn't get that, but we did get a video message, and I'm sure there's going to be a rollout. So, uh, just your thoughts on the process of bringing Mauricio Pochettino. An incredible article on The Athletic about how it all happened and how they got the money, which we're now hearing reports it's around 6 million a year. But they did it. A federation that said they could never make a big time hire like this, they went ahead and did it.
Yeah, it is a big time hire. It is a sexy name with a cachet and with a CV that certainly is impressive, and albeit one that doesn't include international experience, and that is something to be talked about. But I think the United States Soccer Federation, after what they did with Emma Hayes for the women, said, hey, if we're going to do this, and they obviously came to the conclusion that they were going to make a change, let's do something big, bold, and arrogant. And that goes along with what I've wanted everybody to do in the soccer space, if you will, with 2026 bearing down upon us less than 2 years away. If there was ever a time to do big, bold things, this is certainly it. And, hosting a World Cup and the coach of the U.S. team in 2026, I think that's a plum job and a plum opportunity, despite some of the struggles that this team has had. To your point, I was disappointed that it took this long. So keep in mind now, this is another wasted window if you look at it in terms of there's only another 9 windows, so 18 games plus the Gold Cup next summer for Pochettino to work whatever magic he has. However, there's also a part of me that says if we're gonna if we're going to do this, let's make sure we do it right. And that it took this long, while it's irritating, we know that there's contractual things with him and Spurs and all that kind of stuff. And to your point, the fact that there were outside sources of revenue that have come in to make up the rumored $6 million, I think that's good that you have those contacts, that you can access them, and that these billionaires recognize that this is something that they are doing not just for the sport but for this moment. So all in, I'm excited. I am cautiously optimistic about what Pochettino can do, but this team, as we know on the field, and I guess it would start off the field, they need a kick in the ass. And I hope he comes in. I hope he doesn't suffer fools. I hope that there are no sacred cows out there. And I hope that he comes in and makes it very, very clear that they need to be better individually and ultimately collectively in order to do good things in the summer of 2026.
I, I want to touch on that point and maybe get back a little bit later about the process of doing it. But let me ask you about the philanthropic part of it, where you can get these billionaires. And what is at our fingertips, I guess, as a country in order to improve our product, our soccer product. This was huge. I saw that and I read about it. That was what stood out. That Ken Griffin would close the gap on what was owed to Chelsea and the salary for Mauricio Pochettino. Is this the sign of that we have resources? We know there's guys with deep pockets in this
Mhm.
country. You see them getting involved in buying clubs overseas, wherever that might be, and certainly in Major League Soccer. But about having this resources, these people that can certainly help us. Is this something you think we could lean into? Is this something that U.S. soccer cannot be shy about and say, hey, this is the moment. It's 2026, but even after 2026, this is where the sport's going to grow, depending on 2026. I always tell people 2027 is going to be even bigger.
Sure.
That's where we have to do it. But about using those resources.
Yeah, I think it's almost you tap into the I guess the American exceptionalism, and you tap into that competitive fire in nature that exists not just in sports, but in being America and wanting to be and expecting to be the best, which is something that we haven't been when it comes to the men's game. And I guess you tap into that part of the personality that says, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do something that has never been done before. I'm going to at least help, in this case, in terms of the financial contribution, to do something that can lead to us, yes, at some point being great and being great in the men's soccer space, which is something that we haven't done when it comes to our national team. And so I commend the United States Soccer Federation. Look, there's plenty to be critical of the United States Soccer Federation for things that have happened on and off the field and the failures that have happened on and off the field. But in this case, I think they did what needed to be done, and I do think that they not slyly, I think they very prudently and smartly recognize that they can tap into this generation that has grown up with soccer and appreciates it in a way that previous generations haven't. And in doing so, they can fund things, they can support things, and ultimately they can drive things forward. And so I think that this has a lot of tentacles, and I think a lot of good vibes. Not the least of which is you're bringing in this coach that, at least on paper, is someone that hopefully can do some big things.
The From what we're all hearing, this is going to be 2026, and he's going to go back to pursuing coaching in Europe, I think.
Yeah, so this has got to be a short-term thing. This is.
I would love for him to stay around and at least have a presence. I would love for him to oversee, just be a consultant in many ways and say, hey, this is not going to work, or this is good, stick with this, whatever, because we know, look, we're not perfect as a country. We have flaws. We do it our way. Some things are good, some things are not great.
Mhm.
A question that we banded about on with some folks in our industry about, like, he's been in Barcelona the whole time. How for you to be happy, because I don't think he should be based in the U.S. I would like him to spend a lot of time here, just to oversee as much as possible. But what do you think his presence should be, or how much, people say he should be in Europe so he can keep an eye on the
Right.
players. He can do that here. It's 2024. How much feet on the ground should there be in the U.S. from Pochettino?
Yeah, so I think I disagree with some people out there in terms of what the expectations are, in that I want the head coach of the men's national team in a general sense, but maybe even more so because of what we've talked about, less than 2 years away from the World Cup, to be winning hearts and minds.
Yes.
And not just with the way that the team plays on the field. I want him to be that ambassador. I want him to be spreading the gospel. Now, we know that English is not Mauricio Pochettino's first language. In the United States, maybe that isn't even necessarily a hindrance. But ultimately, I do want people to be excited about this, this new image and this new person that is going to exemplify what we are trying to do in moving forward. And you can't do that when you are not here. So I do want him to be here, and I do think he will spend plenty of time here. I mean, the reality is, as we said before, most of this team is playing over in Europe. So practically, he can certainly get and see these players. But I do think that your responsibility as a men's national team coach, even in this moment, goes beyond what you do in terms of the X's and O's. Because let's listen, Max. We saw the crowds over the last couple of games for this team. All right. This team is at a low, especially after the failure in Copa America. It is their responsibility, starting with Pochettino, but all the players' responsibilities, to win us back, to make us believe again in this team, that they are worthy of our time, that they are worthy of our attention, that they are worthy of our love and our heart. And that's the onus. That's what they have to do. It is on them to do that. And they may go about it in different ways. Obviously, the results on the field are going to play a big part in that, but also the way that they talk about the game, the way that they talk about the pride. If it's just a year and a half ultimately for Pochettino, have it be the greatest year and a half ever that sends us on a trajectory after that in a good and positive direction.
I am all for that, and that's why I'd like him to keep up a lot of appearances. Look, when this was announced, on social, just on the news cycle, Sky Sports had a big story about it. BBC had a big story about it. The Spanish publications, Marca, TYC in Argentina, all talking about it. If it was anyone else, I don't think it let's say this didn't happen for Greg Berhalter per se. To have a global star in many ways, a coaching star without question. Certainly, he was a great player in his day. To take this role, someone with that kind of, magnetism that people will be interested outside of the U.S., which is a side note to this. We want it to be excited here, but I think he can get people excited here.
Marketing. It's marketing. Yeah.
I think he's for people who don't know soccer. If they meet Mauricio Pochettino and they get some background on who he is, and they'll fall in love with him and say, "Yeah, I can't believe this guy's leading our soccer," and that excitement, because there is a malaise, and it's I'm feeling it, you're feeling it. This is our industry. We want everyone to be talking about it. I know people aren't always all over the country talking about it. I hope this close to the World Cup that would change.
Max, let me ask you a question, because I was talking with my good friend David Mossy over there on our State of the Union podcast, which you should definitely download and be subscribing to. He asked a really important question, and an interesting one, and one that I had been thinking about before he even asked me. That's how in sync we are.
I can't wait.
He said, in some ways, does this make you feel either sad or angry about the fact that in this moment, this most important moment, after all of the decades of evolution and growth that we have had, that when it all comes down to it, we are going with a Argentinian coach and an English director in Matt Crocker, and yet there are coaches out there, American coaches out there, and as far as we have come, and I thought about it, I was like, yeah, there is a part of me that says, in this most important moment, we didn't have at our disposal someone that we believed in, that we were confident in, maybe not even because they weren't good, but because of that stature or that lack of sexiness when it came to their name, to give the keys to. And people will say, well, we gave the keys to someone like that in Greg Berhalter, and you see how it resulted. But yes, there is that Americanness in me, that there is a little bit of a tug and a pull that says, yeah, in our most important moment, in our time of need, we didn't have it internally. We didn't have it domestically, the ability to do that. And so therefore, have we really progressed? Have we really evolved that much?
Woo, that's a big one, Alexi. But you know me, I'm like you. I wave the American flag. I feel this as a broadcaster. There's big broadcasting gigs I go after, and you may not get it because a really accomplished, let's say, British announcer will get it. And there's no complaints. You listen to those people, and you're like, wow, they're really good. And I can understand that decision. So I think.
But there's plenty of them that you listen to and you say, well,
correct,
they're really good because it's done in an English accent. And so that's what I hope we don't have here.
I think it is dangerous, to your point.
I hope that that it's not just about style, that it is about style combined with substance when it comes to the people that we are hiring, including Mauricio Pochettino.
Yeah, and it feels like, this is a stopgap. Let's get this right for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I truly believe U.S. Soccer wants to develop their coaches and their executives, which we have a lot. You look at what we're doing in MLS. You have really competent people. Tim Bezpachenko is a perfect
Sure.
example, who's now in the Premier League. These are guys that will have a tree and it will continue, just like the coaching trees in the past of Bob Bradley and Bruce Arena. Steve Cherundolo is going to be a great national team coach one day. I can see those parts of it. Wilfred Nancy's not American, but we can kind of adopt him a little bit because he's under the
He's
MLS.
one of ours. Come
He's one
on.
of ours. I'm claiming him, Alexi. We can claim him. But those are the guys who will stick his neck out for American players, American coaches, because he deals with them, and the American system because he loves it. He's here because he enjoys it. He could
Hey,
have gone
not
somewhere.
for nothing when you're talking about that, and I know we'll talk about the players on the field, but all of our players are playing over in Europe. All of our players are playing in leagues that have promotion relegation. So all the screaming and yelling about, oh, MLS players and the tinfoil hats and all that
Oh,
kind of
the
stuff.
MLS
Well,
quotas. Do you remember the
you
MLS
know,
quotas?
all that kind of
That
stuff.
got debunked pretty quick.
I hope that Mauricio Pochettino recognizes that a national team, unlike a club team, a national team isn't about the best players. It's about the best collection of players, regardless of where they come from. And I hope he's just not mesmerized by the European side of the game. And last night, actually, and I think Paul Carr, somebody put out a stat about the number of European, but second division European players that were playing for us. And so you got to be able to scour. I don't know if there's a lot of talent out there and certainly not a lot of time for Pochettino to figure that out, but it's going to be interesting to see who he, through his lens, sees as quality and sees as value. And maybe more interesting, who he doesn't, especially if they are already in the camp. And we start to see some changes from some players, whether they be big name or not.
Well, I think this is a great conversation. I'm looking forward to getting into it right now. I just want to mention I think Pochettino being an Argentine and knowing the identity of being Argentine and playing for the national team, he has to kind of duplicate that with the United States. Argentina, all their players play in Europe, but there is a sensibility. There's an Argentine spirit. They have an Argentine coach. That's the difference there. But I think he will plug into that as well because he knows that's important on the international stage. So I'm looking forward to that. I have a lot of faith in what he's going to do. And with regards to the players' situation, I'll read this quote from Christian Pulisic because you can see it. He was in a pissy mood against New Zealand for good reason, but you can sense the players know there's change and maybe their jobs aren't locked in as it would have felt over at the Copa America. He goes, there's a lot of things that need to change, just the mentality and the culture of the group. We have the quality. I know hopefully that's the first thing he wants to change. So the culture, which we could talk about. I think Pochettino is going to be realistic about players that are playing regularly with their club and the value of that. He might have a couple guys that he'll lean into that aren't playing. Let's say it's Gio Reyna and Flo Balogun who's playing, who might not play in a few weeks because he's not producing for Monaco. I don't think he wants a lot of players like that. I don't think he wants headaches. I don't think he wants bad apples. He doesn't want complacency. I look at the roster, and you correct me, because I mean, people think I was crazy when I mentioned this about how many locks to be on a World Cup roster right now. And I said there's two players. It's Pulisic and Jedi Robinson. I think everyone else, by and large, those guys that aren't locks are close to being, some are close to being locks, but I think those are the only two locks. And he's going to look at it. And even a guy like Gio Reyna, I think Pochettino says, I have 2 years. I go, this guy's injured all the time. He's not going to dismiss what happened in 2022. He's not going to dismiss the fact that he can't get playing time under 3 or 4 different coaches. I think he's going to flesh those things out. And I think it's going to be bad potentially for Gio Reyna, for Matt Turner, for even Weston McKennie. I think I don't think it's going to be seismic, but it's going to be a significant shift. And he will look for players that may not be playing at Milan or in the Premier League, but he might look for players like Marlon Fossey, for instance. He's playing in Belgium. That's not a top league, but he'll find it. Or a guy who's playing in the EFL Championship, like an Aiden Mars. I think they'll look at these guys. It's not just there's European players on the next level, like you said, that could be in there. But it could be a guy in MLS. It could be a guy in Liga MX. I think he's going to come in. It's going to be a quick decision, but he's going to say, okay, yes, no, I can't risk it because I don't have the window to do it.
Yeah, I mean, suck it up, Buttercup. They got to figure it out, right? It's interesting you mentioned the Argentine phenomenon, especially when it comes to coaching. I mean, but there's something in the water. So
Amazing.
we could have done much worse when it comes to a nationality relative to our national team coach, and we hope that this happens for us with the Argentine in charge. You also mentioned Copa America and watching the South American teams play, and you know this, you've been around forever, and there is a rawness and there is a ruthlessness that the players have, and I'm assuming that it is cultural. I hope that he instills some of that in this U.S. team because as we have tried to evolve and to progress, and I don't begrudge anybody doing that. As a matter of fact, we need to do that, and even times taking steps back in order to go 2 steps forward. But as we have done that, we just have to guard against throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And, I was on a live State of the Union the other day, and one of the callers was lamenting the fact that he was watching, this was in the Canada-US game, and he was actually jealous of the way Canada was playing because it reminded him of how the US used to play. And I'm not trying to grumpy old man this thing, okay? But when I see this team right now, and we have given everything to this generation,
Hmm.
and I'm so happy and proud that they don't have to go through the crap that we all went through when it comes to the resources and the coaching and the facilities and the pathways and the opportunities that they have. But with that comes higher expectations. And yet when I see this team right now, I can't help thinking they look soft and they look spoiled. And I really hope that some of that cultural ruthlessness and playing on the edge that we see, even with the best players from South America in many of these teams, I hope that he can instill some of that in this, and as Clint Dempsey would say, some of that dog, right? They need some of that right now. And they've been told how great they are from a very young age. In many cases, they've been protected and insulated and isolated in these warm cocoons throughout their career. And at some point, they need a reality check. And hopefully, this is that moment. And he uses some of that aggression. It's controlled aggression, but it is aggression, and it's right there on the line in the way that they play, and that we have some of that in the way that we play going forward. Because I think it actually exists in these players. It just hasn't been brought out enough. And finally, I'll say this to Christian Pulisic or to Tyler Adams or any of these players that are, complaining now about the mentality of the team. You and I both know, Max, that I think more so than any sport out there, when the whistle blows, it is a player's game. So it is up to you. And if you have to manufacture a mentality, if you have to manufacture a commitment and a dedication, then it's up to you. And so I blame Christian Pulisic. I blame Tyler Adams. I blame all of the players as much as I do Greg Berhalter. All right. Again, a coach that they all stood up for and wanted. So figure it out. Mauricio Pochettino, he can lead you to water, but he ain't going to make you drink. At some point, you got to be able to do it yourself.
I love the expression "throw out the baby with the bathwater." It really applies to this because you said that intensity, that never say die American attitude, which served us so well. We've kind of taken that away, and what we're left with is we have good soccer, but it's not as good as those other countries, and we need to channel that back in. But that's what we had that others didn't, right?
Yeah, yeah. We did more with less. And yeah, there was a rudimentary raw type of play, but we weren't needlessly and in a very reckless way, playing out of the back just to be romantic, just to do it. We lived to fight another day, and we said, we're not going to die on this hill here. And again, that doesn't mean that I want people to play a caveman form of the game. But I do want us to recognize individually and collectively what we are and what we aren't, okay? And if we do that, I think we can get the best version of ourselves. And in doing that, I think that we can get better results.
Every good national team leans into who they are. And that's why Brazil, although not right now, they lost yesterday, or Germany, and these countries that have that identity do so well. I truly believe that. Sometimes you get in trouble because you align, hey, there's something about being German or Brazilian or Argentine which benefits these countries succeeding. And it is, but it's there too. But there's so much here. I hope, one thing that was frustrating about these September games, certainly the Canada game, and going back to past friendlies, leading up to the Copa America. That first game, the U.S. always was slow, and
Mm.
they were second best. And at halftime, they go, let's fire it up. I don't want them to fire it up anymore. Fire it up from the beginning. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
these are all things Pochettino could fix. How are we still pretty optimistic about 2026 on a scale of 1 to 10?
I mean, so I don't want to be Pollyanna, but I am a half glass full type of guy, and
Yeah.
I am so excited about 26. And you're the OG and one of the OGs, but for those of us that have been around for a while, I know we like to kick ourselves for what we haven't done. And that's okay because sometimes that makes us better. And we were just talking about sometimes you need a kick in the ass. But also, it's sometimes you also need to take a step back and pat ourselves on the back for how far we've come. And that's what makes me so excited about 2026. And on the field, yes, I think that they can do magical things. I think they can do more with less. I think they can use it to be motivated and again show the world that we are better than the perception is out there. And then off the field and around the field, look, the world is coming back to a very, very different landscape than the one back in 1994 and the one back in 1999, because I look at those two moments as really changing the way that we think about soccer in the United States. And so I'm so proud of the fact that we are going to reintroduce the world to what America has become relative to the game of soccer. But you know what? We can't waste this. We have to be prepared. And to be quite honest, we should have been preparing a long time ago. And many people are. But this ramp that we talk about up to 2026, all right, it's getting shorter and shorter. And to your point, Max, the circus is going to come and it's going to leave town. All right. But what is it going to leave? What's that legacy that is going to leave? We know what 94 did. We know what 99 did. What is 2026 going to do? But I think the the effectiveness and the size of that legacy is dependent on how much we prepare and how much we use that summer, and we harness that summer and all the power. I'm talking to you today because of the summer of 1994. I lived the power of what
Been
it
30
can do
years,
for an
Alexi.
individual.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But I'm so excited that there are going to be other players, including American players, that are going to experience not only that power, but to the 10th degree because of the difference that exists right now. We are a soccer playing nation. We are a soccer country. We do it in a different way. All right. We should never, ever apologize for what we are or what we aren't. As a matter of fact, I think we should lean into it because I'm incredibly proud of the fact that we have taken soccer in a country and culture where soccer isn't king, where there's so much more competition with the other sports. And we have made it something. It's not niche. It's not underground. It's above ground. It's vibrant. It's discerning. We have an incredible fan base out there. We have incredible leagues, men's, women's, all of these different pathways. So I remain incredibly bullish about what's going to happen on and off the field relative to 2026.
And we got billionaires that are ready to splash their money at the
Right?
drop. Who has that? People are envious of us, Alexi.
Man, oh
I'm
man.
envious of us.
There's a
To steal
reason
a
why
line
so
from
many
Spinal
people
Tap.
there's a reason why so many people want to come to the United States. Let's be honest. We are certainly not perfect. We have flaws, but man, oh man, I'll take it over places around the world, regardless if it's soccer or not out there, because we also have incredible potential and incredible growth. And don't think for a second that the rest of the world doesn't look at the marketing potential and the market that exists and the continuing to emerge market right now. We got to make sure that we mine it for all it's worth too here domestically.
If you build it, they will come without question. And by the way, my enthusiasm was dipping a little bit, Alexi. You've reinvigorated me
I'm
with
here
that.
for you, buddy.
I appreciate that because I know it's possible. And the sport's growing, but man, if they could they're not going to win a World Cup. But if they made a quarterfinal in 2026 or even a semi, it just makes such a huge difference. And that's the one people always ask me, how does a sport grow? I go, it can't really define it, but I know for a fact if you do really well at a World Cup, that helps the growth
Yep.
10 times more than anything else.
Huge.
So
It's huge. I mean, the U.S. women's national team after the World Cup was probably at its lowest point in decades. And then within a year, they were able to bring themselves back. Now, what'd they do? They went out and hired Emma Hayes, right? That's important, right? But then they made sure that they won and they lived up to the history and they lived up to the success that they had. So there's nothing that replaces winning, especially when it comes to the way that we think about things in America. Now, it's a little apples and oranges when it comes to the men's team and the women's team. But to your point, if you have a successful World Cup and people come into that tent that, are just discovering it for the first time, Not everybody's going to stay, but a portion of them are going to stay. And that's how we build the sport. That's how we have built the sport. This tent has gotten so much bigger and so many more people have come in and so many more people have stayed. But the reason why they stay is that they're excited. They love the singing, they love the pageantry, and they love the fact that in this moment where our country is so divided, in this case, I can celebrate an American team on the field doing something that most people know is that much more difficult because we don't have that historic type of focus on the game that other countries do. So let's have some of that. I will eat that. I will eat that raw, my friend. That'll be awesome. So hopefully we get as much of that as possible in 2026. And then to your point, we just carry on into 2027 and we use that momentum to go into 2027 and beyond.
Excellent. And for us to close the gap in a short amount of time for these countries that have been doing this for so long would be very satisfying. And I also want to mention before we part ways, Emma Hayes did play a role in bringing Mauricio Pochettino. So it just goes to show as Keystone Cops as we have viewed U.S. soccer. And look, they brought this upon themselves. They pretty nailed this. Yep. I took too long, but they did a really nice job. They used their resources and they got the man. So now we move forward. And Alexi Lalas, we look forward to hearing what you have to say about Pochettino. Hopefully October is a little better than September. But again, they are just friendlies. So let's not dwell on them.
Just friendlies. So
upwards and onwards.
Bigger pictures. There's bigger pictures, my friend. I look forward to your Harry Carey soccer impersonation, my friend.
You kid, but I will send you and I'll say, is this good for me to publish? And if you say yes, I will do it.
We'll workshop it. It'll be good.
All right. Done. Alexi Lalas, Fox Soccer, Fox Sports, and the State of the Union pod. Check it all out. He's the man in so many different ways, and I appreciate you joining us here. We'll talk soon, Alexi.
Thank you, my friend.
We will be back with Check Complete. Don't go anywhere. We'll look at the South American World Cup qualifiers. Never a dull minute there. There's never a dull minute in the sports. The Soccer OG continues.